Good afternoon, everyone. Good crowd. Glad to see you all here today. United States Senator John Thune is no stranger to public service. For nearly 30 years, he served South Dakotans at the local, state, and federal units of government. For the current session of Congress, Senator Thune serves on the Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee, the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, the Finance Committee, where he's the senior-most Republican and serves as chairman. And Senator Thune also serves as chairman of the Senate Republican Conference, the number 3 position in the Senate Republican leadership. He and his wife, Kimberly, live in Sioux Falls and have 2 grown daughters. And last September, John and Kimberly welcomed their first grandchild, Henley, and I believe you have another one on the way, keeping his fingers crossed for this week. In his free time, such as he has, he enjoys spending time with his family, of course, pheasant hunting and running. I think the reason Senator Thune is in Madison today on the campus of Dakota State University is best summed up in a quote from remarks he gave earlier this year at the State of Internet Conference in Washington. At the Commerce Committee, we don't guide new technologies. Instead, technology guides us to the policies that are needed. At the end of the day, it will be American innovators and entrepreneurs who will determine what the digital future holds, not us. The best that government can do is try to facilitate their success while making sure we're not accidentally standing in their way. Senator, we can't agree more. At Dakota State, our leadership, faculty, staff, students, and our community have created a vision for the future of how we together are eager to move forward on behalf of the state of South Dakota to bring the economic development impact of this next technological advancement to the communities, businesses, and citizens of South Dakota. It's my honor to introduce and please welcome United States Senator John Thune.
That's right. Thank you very much. Thanks. Please have a seat. Thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate very much, thank you, President Dr. Griffiths, for the introduction, and it's great to be with you all again on the campus of Dakota State University and to see the exciting things that are happening here, and to just share with you a little bit about some of the things that we're working on, and then I'd love to hear from all of you. We'll open it up to any questions that you all may have on issues that pertain to the universe of things that you're dealing with here or elsewhere for that matter as well. So we'll try and keep it very informal and interactive today. But I did want to say that having, obviously worked with DSU over these past several years, how exciting it is to see the great work that continues in the world of cybersecurity and the workforce issues that are being addressed, the number of people that are coming out of Dakota State University and going into that field, because there's a huge demand. There's a workforce shortage out there, and Dakota State University is helping meet that need. And I am always proud to brag about to my colleagues in the Senate what's happening at Dakota State University, and it's a designation by the NSA, and what that means not only for this area and the economy here in South Dakota, but what it means for our national security interests, our vital national security interests, which are so closely tied these days to cyber security. The world is, as you know, just picking up the newspaper or turning on the television is a very dangerous place, and a lot of that has to do with the threats that we face on a daily basis in the cyber universe. But I also wanted to just point out that if you look at where we need to go in terms of the future, we're very interested in getting to 5G first. We're competing with the Europeans, with the Asians. Everybody wants to get to 5th generation technology when it comes to mobile first, and we have to win that race. And so I'm excited to hear about some of the things that are going on here currently at Dakota State University and some of the plans that we have. To me, it's incredibly exciting, and it fits nicely with what we're doing at the committee in Washington. As President Griffiths said, I have the privilege in Washington of serving on 3 committees. I serve on agriculture, of course, which is very important to our economy here in South Dakota. It's our #1 industry, and so we're very interested in helping shape agricultural policy that is good for our state and for our country. I serve on the Senate Finance Committee, which is the committee that has jurisdiction over taxes, trade, healthcare, a whole range of those types of issues. And I hope it's going to be a busy committee in the days and weeks and months ahead. I'm hoping that we're dealing with tax reform and healthcare reform and other things. And then I have the privilege of chairing the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, which, as I like to describe it, covers planes, trains, and automobiles. We have pretty much all modes of transportation. We have telecommunications under our jurisdiction and the internet. We have the space program, NASA. We have oceans, so anything dealing with the Coast Guard is under our committee's jurisdiction. And then we have a whole range of other cats and dogs that kind of affect the economy in one way, form, or another. But anything really that touches the economy kind of comes under our committee's jurisdiction. We also have jurisdiction over all the professional sports and the Olympics. And so I get lots of interesting suggestions about subjects to hold hearings on. A couple of years ago, I had members of my committee and others who were in my ear saying that we ought to hold hearings after Tom Brady was accused of, underinflating footballs. And I kind of decided that maybe that was something the NFL could resolve on its own, how much air they ought to put in a football. But it gives you an example of kind of the range of the committee's interests. And we've had hearings here recently. We've looked at the issues of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, blockchain, a whole bunch of things that we think represent sort of the future in the area in which we need to be headed. We've had hearings on autonomous vehicles, on drones and the technologies that are existent there. Because we have jurisdiction over aviation, we have to write a Federal Aviation Administration authorization bill later this year. And the drone issue will come into play heavily during that discussion. As you can see, there's already a lot of development, growth in that industry, a lot of recreational use, a lot of commercial use, a lot of national security use, and a lot of use by the bad people, the bad guys out there who have figured out that they can use drones to deliver firearms and things that that can hurt people. And so we're seeing a lot of more interest in that in the terrorist world as well. So that's an issue that we're going to have to deal with later this year. But we also have a bill that I introduced here. I introduced it in the last session of Congress. It almost made it through. It got hung up in the year-end politics in Washington. But I reintroduced it this year. We moved it out of our committee, and it's awaiting action by the Senate, and I hope that it will receive a favorable vote in the Senate here in the not-too-distant future, and then be considered by the House and hopefully end up on the President's desk. But it's called the Mobile Now Bill. And it basically is sort of, I would say, is a down payment on what we're going to have to do to get to 5G fast. It means we've got to get more spectrum. There are 16 billion wireless devices in the world today. By the year 2020, they say there will be more than 50 billion wireless devices. All that needs bandwidth, it needs spectrum to ride on. And so we've got to figure out ways to free up more spectrum. In 2010, President Obama issued an executive order calling for an additional 500 megahertz of spectrum to be made commercially available that's currently used by government. So in other words, the government sits on about 70% of the spectrum, by the way. A lot of it's in the DoD. But to free more of that up for commercial use, well, this bill codifies that commitment. It says by 2020, we've got to have an additional 500 megahertz for commercial use to deal with the demand that we're going to have out there for more spectrum. And it also calls on us to look for new areas. We've got to try and figure out where we're going to find that bandwidth in the future. And some of it's, some of the high frequency, millimeter wave bandwidth, some of the 3 gigahertz areas. There's a whole, realm of areas out there that we're going to be looking at to see if we can free up additional spectrum that can be used to fuel the demand that we're going to need. In fact, the study that's being contemplated actually looks at about 13 gigahertz of additional bandwidth. So it's going to take that kind of development, investment, if we're going to be able to have this Internet of Things and the connectivity that we all, I think, expect that we're going to need. And it has remarkable applications. I mean, it's not just, it's our daily lives, the bricks in the wall and people's socks. And, you look at all the ways that things are going to be connected in the future. But it also has a lot of really what I would call very basic safety applications. I mean, if you look at an autonomous vehicle or a smart vehicle today, with the technology that we have, it can brake in about 4.5 feet. With 5th generation, with 5G technology, you can stop or brake that same smart vehicle in about 1 inch. I mean, that's the degree of dimension of difference that this means in terms of how it has safety applications. the ability of just machines to communicate with each other is going to make profound differences. Being able to determine when a bridge needs to be replaced or when a pipeline needs to be replaced. Those are all things that are going to have, applications in the world in which we live, and will contribute mightily to public safety and just a better functioning society. And so the connectivity of the future is something that we have to be prepared for, and we've got to be thinking about that today and planning for it. So I think it fits in nicely with a lot of the things, the ideas that your leadership has here in terms of where they want to go. Again, I think in the world of cybersecurity, there's no question but that we're going to have a huge demand, because there are state actors, non-state actors, terrorists, people are just sort of randomly every single day launching cyber attacks at our critical infrastructure, financial services, you name it. And we have to be prepared to defend against those types of attacks in the future. And that, I think, is really going to be one of the biggest challenges from a national security standpoint as we look into the future. We got lots of threats that we face currently around the world, but if you look over the horizon, and it's happening already on a daily basis, but it's only going to intensify over time. So those are a few of the things that we're working on in the Commerce Committee in the area of telecommunications. And I will tell you that we're very proud of the work that's being done here at Dakota State University. Want to partner with you, do whatever we can to assist and help as you continue to pursue not only your career ambitions, but also as this school continues to look for new and better ways to serve not only its students in this community, in this region, but our country, all of which are happening already today with the good work that occurs here on a daily basis. So I want to say thank you. We're grateful to the students, the staff, the faculty, the administration, the leadership here at DSU, and really look forward to what the future holds. So with that, I think I'll shut up, as we say, and yield the floor, and try and respond to questions, comments that all of you may have. But again, just appreciate the chance to be with you again today and hear from you and update you a little bit about what we're doing. Questions, comments, accusations, whatever the case may be. Yeah. It's a long run up there.
So you made mention of autonomous vehicles, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the major sources of income for smaller towns in South Dakota along the highway is truckers sleeping there, eating, getting gas, etc. Autonomous trucking is one of the major clear applications of autonomous vehicles, because robots don't need to sleep or eat; they just need more gas and fuel. What is your opinion on the potential economic impact of those vehicles no longer stopping in those towns?
Well, I think that's a really good question, and it's obviously a consideration when you look at any disruptive technology. There are going to be, I always guess I look at these things and think, okay, yes, there are going to be some perhaps negative impacts, but are they going to be outweighed by the positive impacts? And what are the new types of opportunities that will be available for people out there, the new job opportunities for folks who might be involved in an industry that is disrupted by some new technology. And trucking industry is certainly an example of that. I mean, there's already a lot of interest among the trucking companies in autonomous vehicles, and I would suspect that you'll probably see in the next few years some of that transition starting to occur. There are a number of companies that I meet with on a fairly regular basis that are already involved heavily in autonomous vehicles. Google's quite a ways down the road. Ford hopes to have fully autonomous vehicles on the road by the year 2021, and the trucking industry, of course, is going to be impacted by that. And I think you have to look at and take into consideration those impacts. And what can we do to transition? What are the workforce needs of the future? How can we employ people who perhaps might be trucking today in future opportunities that are going to be created by these new technologies? And so it's not I don't look at it as a zero-sum game. I look at it as, let's make the pie bigger and look for the new opportunities that will be created in South Dakota's economy as a result of some of these technologies. But that isn't to say that there aren't some of the more sort of historic job opportunities and industries that today are probably going to have to evolve and change going into the future. But it's a good question, and I don't think anybody has a really good answer, except to say that we've got to be looking for ways to make that transition as smooth as possible and prepare people with the skill sets and the workforce with the knowledge that they need for the economy of the future. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your service to our nation. Basically, in order for us to transition from one generation of technology to the next, we must do some level of analysis. So in regards to your work with that, what analysis did you guys do in order for you to look at the positive side of things as well as the negative side and do the comparison? How does that really work?
Okay. Well, I think there's always, you want to be able to attach and make decisions based on good data, on good information, and as many analytics as possible. And so when you take a look at these new technologies, for example, the first thing that will get pointed out to me is when I talk about autonomous vehicles is, well, are they safe? And there was an accident here not long ago with an autonomous vehicle, and it was, oh my gosh, what happens if the technology doesn't work? And so that's a good point. But remember that 35,000 people die on America's roads every year today, and 90+% of those are human error. They're either driving while distracted or driving under the influence. So if you could eliminate a lot of those types of accidents that occur on our roadways, just think of how many people we would save every year if we could eliminate distracted driving, driving under the influence, and all the things that are created by human error. So yeah, you weigh those things, and I think you have to look at everything in terms of costs and benefits, and use good data to make decisions as much as you can. We had a demonstration of autonomous vehicles, and I got in one of these cars, and we drove it from Capitol Hill out into Virginia across the bridge and the river and all that. And it's a little uncomfortable when because we came up along this garbage truck, and the garbage trucks tend to kind of go like this sometimes, and the car was going, and the truck started to kind of lean over to that side, and the car automatically adjusted. And I mean, it is really remarkable. And I'm not here to say that there aren't issues that we have to think about and resolve, but with the vehicle-to-vehicle communication and vehicle-to-infrastructure type communication and technologies that exist out there, I really do believe it's only a matter of time. It used to be that was one of those things that we thought was very futuristic, and as recently as just a few years ago, that's never going to happen. I'm convinced now, based on the things that I've seen and some of the research that's being done, that it's not that far away. And I think it does encompass tremendous benefits, not only in terms of savings, convenience, cost, environmental benefits, fewer vehicles on the road, but certainly from a safety standpoint, I think there are going to be some big benefits. But yeah, you can't make these decisions in a vacuum. You have to do your best to research, study, test again, and make sure the stuff works. And then look at the data when you're making decisions. Good question. Anything else? Yes, up right here. Okay, sure, yeah.
Oh, okay. Actually, my question is, do we know that in terms of technology, we know that the competition between Northern America, Asian, and Europeans are really tight, and in regards with the 5G technology coming up, do we have any estimation time or any period that technology is going to take effective or stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody sort of assumes that 2020 is kind of the magic date when everybody's gonna be fully to 5G, and the race is kind of on to get there first. And I think one of the things we have to do is think about what things can we do to enable that, what things can we do that will get impediments or obstacles out of the way. I mean, one of the things that's encompassed in our bill, the Mobile Now bill, has to do with just the siting and streamlining, making it easier to get things permitted. Fifth generation mobile technologies are going to require more infrastructure, more facilities, smaller, but more. And that means they have to get easements and all those sorts of things. And so how can we expedite that so that we aren't running into barriers that are sort of self-imposed or imposed in a way that really prevents us from getting to the goal? And so our bill contemplates and looks at a lot of those issues and tries to figure out ways to take down some of the barriers to those technologies. But I do think that, it is a race, and I think we want to stay in the lead. We got to third generation, and then there was the race to fourth generation, and now it's 5G. We, I think, had the good fortune in the past to take a good look into the future and make the right decisions and the right investments. And I think part of it too is incentivizing the investment that's going to be necessary to get us there. But I know I was just in Europe a few weeks ago, and I was meeting with the Germans and the French and the Brits, and we talked about a lot of issues, most of which was sort of focused on national security, but we got into some of these issues as well. And make no mistake about it, it's a competition, and we want to get there first, and we're glad that Dakota State University is helping lead the way. Yes, sir.
My question deals more with gap between. So I'm from western South Dakota, Harding County, out in the midst of nowhere, and there are places where you lose calls because you lose calls. And my question is, are we creating a bigger gap between those that have access to fifth generation technologies and those that don't have access to that? If we're talking about our reservation communities, folks in reservations are approaching technology at a higher rate than anybody. First introductions to this type of technology than any other particular demographic. As we have almost 10% population native in South Dakota, that's a big deal for us.
Right.
And if we're going to talk about losing some of those jobs to automated technologies, automated trucking, automatic, all this sort of stuff, well, then livestock and everything like that, who's going to, truck the sheep from Harding County, South Dakota, all the way down to Chicago or wherever they end up going, or Buffalo from that side of the state up to Canada and that sort of stuff. So where, that's responsibly, how are we approaching making the gap bigger? Where, in places where like the technology isn't necessarily there or education isn't as strong, making those applications meaningful in places to people within those communities.
Okay. No, that's a good question. And we have some pretty big gaps here in South Dakota. You get out in the western part of the state, there's a lot of geography out there, and there's a lot of space, and there aren't a lot of people. And to get private investment, most private investors want a return. And so when they look at density and population and those sorts of things, they're going to that's how they're going to make decisions. Can we get a return back on this? And that's why we've had we sort of had vehicles or mechanisms like the Universal Service Fund, which is designed to help sort of bridge that gap and bridge the digital divide in rural areas. And one of the, I guess my areas of focus as chairman of the committee is what can we do, what steps can we take that will help provide incentives for build out in those areas of the country, and particularly in the state of South Dakota, where we don't have access to high-speed internet service, or we don't have good wireless technologies. And so some of that, I think, involves tweaking programs that exist, trying to make them work better. I've had a number of conversations about the very question that you've raised on the reservations. We've got a lot of land mass out there, not a lot of people, and some tremendous economic challenges. And I think one of the things that can really, help improve the quality of life, standard of living, and certainly create a better incentive for, a more vibrant private sector economy out there is having connectivity. So we've had those conversations. You've got some providers who are here in the audience right now, but there are some that, probably closer to it out there in the western part of the state, who are very focused on that very issue. And I guess what I've tried to say is, okay, tell us, what does it take? What can we do? How can we get out of your way? Or what kind of incentives can we provide that will enable you to deliver these types of high-speed services to those areas of South Dakota? And so when I talk about mobile now, that deals more with the spectrum issue and with wireless connectivity, but we've also got to, we need to build out. We want to encourage the deployment of more broadband hardwired in these areas too, and that's expensive. And that's why you've got to have some ways of sort of leveling that out. And, so we're always looking at universal service fund reforms and things that we can do better and more effectively. But it's a good question. It's not an easy one to solve, because in a free market economy, people are going to build it where they think it's going to, they're able to get a return on it. And so we've had to look for ways to be able to give people the necessary incentives, and some of that involves a little bit of government help and involvement, and that's kind of what we've tried to do with some of these programs that exist today, and look for ways to tweak them to make them work better. Yes, sir.
Farming equipment is becoming increasingly computerized, and although this provides a lot of benefits, we're seeing cases where equipment dealers are forcing farmers to take their machinery into them in order to get them fixed, and not allowing them to fix it by themselves. Does the federal government have any interest in regulating this behavior?
You mean in requiring somebody to come into a dealer to get, if a John Deere dealership, for example, sold you?
Yeah, exactly. Your John Deere tractor breaks down.
Right.
It's a simple fix you can do yourself, but you have to bring it into the dealer in order for them to make the computer think that it's now fixed.
Well, that kind of goes against the way we were raised out here, doesn't it? If you can fix it yourself. No, I don't think, I think that's, I'm not sure they can make you do that. I certainly wouldn't think they should.
Well, the reason I asked is because they're running into this in other states. Okay. Where they already have this problem, okay, where some tractors are beginning, or combines are beginning to break down, and they're forcing them to go into the equipment dealers in order to have these codes corrected within the computational machinery.
Okay. Well, I guess that's something we may have to look at. I'm not, to me, I know that they're complicated enough, and now these things are all, they're all in little computers. They used to be, when I was growing up, cars were a lot simpler to, my dad would get under the hood, and my brother could take cars apart and put them back together, and, that was a fairly normal thing. Nowadays, it's not that easy. But, I think that the level of complexity associated with the technology in one of these pieces of equipment today is such that it's probably going to limit the ability of most farmers and producers to be able to do that on their own. But if they have that capability, I certainly wouldn't want to exclude them from being able to do that. One of the great uses of technology, as we've seen in agriculture, is you now have, with GPS technology and everything else, you can almost define down to a square inch of ground how much seed to apply, how much fertilizer to apply. And there's a lot of interest in South Dakota in drone technology, and being able to send a drone out to look at a field and figure out where they need to apply more weed killer and insecticide, all those sorts of things. And livestock producers are, they like to, you can inspect your herds that way with drones. So these technologies continue to change the way we do business, even in a state like South Dakota. But you still have to put the seed in the ground. You still got to have the right rains at the right time, and the technology is better, and I think we're way more productive, obviously, and we're getting way better yields than we used to, too, as a result of some of that. But it does as a disruptive technology, and it creates changes in the way we've done things in the past. I think we have to adapt, but if you're somebody who can figure out how to fix that stuff, then you ought to be able to fix it yourself. That'd be my view. I couldn't do it, but.
So I'm not against like racing towards 5G and getting there first, but I was just wondering what the big benefits are to getting there first versus like other countries, and are we being good stewards of our time and money by just not rushing it, but doing it right the first time, so that we don't have to rebuild infrastructure, tear it down and rebuild infrastructure later, or completely change like the new technology and fix it so that it's more secure down the road, but to have it done right the first time for the most part.
Okay. Well, I think you're right. I mean, you want to secure it, and that's going to be a big part. That's going to be a big part of the conversation. But I don't think. I mean, I think the United States is always. We like to do things big, and we like to do things well. And as a nation, I think we've always valued and put a premium on investing in the right areas to sort of lead the world. And I think this is no exception when it comes to what we do in the area of technology. So, yeah, you want to get it right. Hopefully you don't have to rebuild stuff and do it all over again. I think that's why we're trying to anticipate what some of those questions are, prepare for, like I said, in the bill that we introduced, to have governmental entities, the people who are going to build these networks, looking at these questions, trying to determine what the needs are, how governments are going to have to be involved, and particularly in siting and easements and all the things that go with that. We have a dig once proposal in this bill, so that if you're building a highway, you also put in place the capability, if the time comes, to lay fiber or build whatever the towers that are necessary for that. So, I mean, those are things we need to think through. We want to get it right, but I also think there's a huge advantage to being first, because that's what attracts the investment. That's what makes us more productive. That's what keeps us, I think, in a leadership role in the world. And so I think it's a competition, and that's what a free market does. It forces people to sharpen their pencils, come up with new and innovative solutions, and try and get there first. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree with the notion that we want to make sure we get it right. But I certainly think that there's an advantage for us to be the leader and to get there ahead of these other countries and to win that competition.
So earlier you said that there were going to be barriers. So how do you limit or eliminate those barriers, and what are your steps to becoming first and winning that race?
Well, I think that one, you want to have, when I say barriers, and usually when I'm thinking of things that are sort of in the way of the development, the build out of some of these projects and some of this technology. And I mentioned a few of those that can be put in place that can make it tough. Just getting the permitting, the easements, the land, all the things that you need to do to install and build the types of towers. I mean, there are communities where they're going to be probably more resistive to that than other communities are. So, that would certainly be one area. I think too, in terms of regulatory burdens, we want to make sure that we use a light touch in regulation, not a heavy hand. Because if we use a heavy hand, oftentimes what happens is the investment will go someplace else where it's easier to build things. And we have in our country today a number of disincentives to investment here, which is why we see a lot of businesses and a lot of jobs going to other places around the world. And I think a lot of that has to do with the regulatory burden and in some cases the tax burden. Our corporate tax rate's the highest in the industrialized world, and all the nations that we're now competing with have dramatically dropped their tax on business, and that's a real disincentive to doing business in the United States today. And the same thing is true in terms of regulation. If you have regulatory agencies that are imposing heavy regulatory burdens on some of the build out of these technologies, then people are going to look for places where it's easier to do it. So I think we have to be thinking through those issues. I'm an advocate I think we've had the reason we've seen such an explosion since the sort of inception of the internet 20 years ago is because we've used a light touch when it comes to the regulatory regime that governs the internet. And when you start when government starts putting a heavy hand on that, I think it's going to mean less investment, and that we're probably not going to win the competition with the countries that we're vying with for the lead when it comes to technology. And so I think it's advisable for us to continue to maintain what I think has been a remarkable story, success story, with what has helped get us there. And that's, in my view, a light touch regime when it comes to regulation. So, and there are some specific areas where I think that's true, which, we could have a conversation about too. But, we're in the process of a transition right now, for example, at the FCC, and they're looking at a lot of things that the previous FCC did that they think will make it easier for people to invest and provide more incentives for them to invest than the previous regime. Yes.
So I was just kind of curious. I guess we obviously probably want to be first in the 5G here, but I guess somebody over there said earlier about like the rural areas. Mm-hmm. I guess outside of this country, like the Import-Export Bank was a big supporter of like emerging technologies from a foreign standpoint. Is there, I guess, efforts to maybe get something like that back going to get 5G or other like purchases of large ticket items to assist with technology for access to like foreign countries or other areas?
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's basically, the Exim Bank is a it's sort of a tool that's used by companies that want to be able to export, want to be able to do business internationally. So, yeah, there's I guess an argument could be made. There are a lot of folks who argue that Exim is used by big companies that really don't need the help. But there are a number of companies here in South Dakota that have used the Export-Import Bank too. And there's a lot of misinformation about how it's funded, what it costs, and those sorts of things. But it may be that there will, as we look at ways to incentivize investment, take a look at some of the existing programs, agencies that are out there operating in that space already, and what we can do to get them to find new ways to do that better. Exim Bank has sort of been a controversial, I would say, in the last few years agency. And the question always is, do the taxpayers get the bang for their buck when it comes to Export-Import Bank? Mostly used, I would say, by larger companies and some of them that are in the aerospace industry. But there may be a place for that. We'll see. I think that's a legitimate, valid question.
It seems to me that as a country we're diminishing as intellectuals. How is this technology going to help benefit our education and just our intellectual capacity as a country as a whole? Because it seems we need a higher edge, and with this technology, how is that going to help give us an edge on everything else? And with that, where's the breaking point between freedom and security? Like, at what point do we give up too many of our freedoms to be secure with this new technology?
Well, I think that, this country was founded, if there was a defining principle of 1776, it was freedom. That's what always has differentiated this country, I think, from a lot of other countries around the world. We believe in, personal freedom coupled with individual responsibility. We believe in economic freedom and free markets and free enterprise. And I think that's why we have the most robust economy in the world. We used to be about a quarter of the world's GDP. We're a little under that today, but we still are significantly larger than most of the other world economies combined. So we want to, what we've done well has worked well in the past. And so to your point, I think that if we want to, if you want to make that discussion about freedom versus security, I would argue that government's job is to provide security, to defend the nation. I always say that if you don't get national security right, the rest is conversation. But we want to maintain, I think, the free market economy and all the elements of that have been such a huge economic success for the country. And your first question had to do with education. I do think that this does help with a knowledge economy. I mean, I will tell you, growing up in my hometown, Murdo, South Dakota, population 490, that for me, life began and ended at the city limits of Murdo. You know, we just didn't have, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have, you know, for us, a big day was going to Pier because they had a Taco John's and a movie theater. You know, I mean, it was a different world. And I look at the way we studied. You know, my mom was really somebody who believed that our kids are going to be, we're going to have culture. We may be out here in Murdo, but we're going to have culture. And so, you know, I took piano lessons for 6 years. Required, every kid in my family. We had 4 boys and a girl, but they sat down and we pounded out. We took piano lessons, and my mom insisted that we were going to read the classics. And so, you know, when I was a little kid in the afternoon, she requires to come in and sit and read a book for an hour. And you know, that was kind of your access to the world. I do think that all this technology gives us tremendous opportunity to grow the base of knowledge that we have, to make us more productive as individuals, more productive as a society, more productive in terms of companies that we work with and all that. So I think there's huge upside in terms of the knowledge that we gain and acquire, how easy it is to get to it. You know, instead of going to World Book Encyclopedia to do research or going over the library, you know, you just pop on, you go to a search engine and you put whatever it is that you're looking for and you get it. I mean, it's just created a real knowledge economy. It's also created a lot of challenges. And, you know, I think the advent of social media has created, you know, when you look at our school systems today, I talk with a lot of administrators, and you've got issues like bullying, things that didn't exist in the past. I think it has a tendency to make us a little lazier, you know, because everything is so easy for us, comes so easy for us. And so you know, there's always a give and a take. But I think on balance, when you look at just the powerful tool that technology represents, how it helps us grow our knowledge economy in this country, it creates better paying jobs when the economy is more productive and growing at a faster rate. And I think that helps raise the standard of living for everybody. And that also provides a disincentive when you get other places around the world where they start seeing those types of gains. You know, I think one of the big reasons that we have people who choose to take up arms and join terrorist organizations is because there's no economy in some of these places. And we've been really blessed here in the United States. And the more we can export some of that to other parts of the world, the better off we'll be. But I think it's been, you know, the benefits are huge. Yes, there are some downsides, and I don't think we ever want to sacrifice freedom. I think that's something that this country is built upon, and so I don't think that you have to, I don't see that as a zero-sum game. I think that's kind of a false choice. I think you can keep the country secure, do the right things, but I think you still allow us to enjoy the freedoms that have made us such a blessed nation.
Senator, we're getting the last question signal, so here it is.
With the development of 5G technology, do you think it's more important to incentivize security over speed and range, or to have better speed and range with less security?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you want to, and this is where DSU comes into play. You know, you want to make sure that you're providing that blanket of security out there, but you know, speed and range are wonderful, wonderful attributes, wonderful assets, and you get pretty spoiled when you get used to having that kind of speeds that we experience here relative to other places. But I don't, you know, I think that, again, I think you got to strike that balance, you know, and I'm not sure I have a good answer to that question. It's a kind of a tough question and sort of a philosophical one, but. Anything else for the good of the order? Or was that? Okay. Oh, I got the hook? All right, you got the hook. Well, listen, thank you. It's great being with you all. Again, I appreciate everything that's happening here, and would encourage you, if you have questions that you want to ask or issues you want to raise with us, get in touch with our office. And I just want to encourage you to keep on keeping on. And the world is clamoring for the kinds of skill sets that you all have here, and I think also for the kind of work ethic that we have in the Midwest. I'm always proud to represent South Dakota because everywhere you go, people if they've had any opportunity to work with or interact with South Dakotans, talk about just the work ethic, the integrity, and the professionalism. And that's something that I'm very proud of. So thanks for what you're doing here. Keep up the great work, and we'll see you around the neighborhood. Thanks.
You're welcome here anytime you want to be challenged by some of our students. And perhaps you could tell some of those people in Washington, you came to this small town in South Dakota and everybody knew what 5G was.